Here's a number for you. 7.2 million Americans out of work right now. That's 7.2 million people looking for a job and not finding one. And it's the kind of hurt that can affect entire communities. Our Dave Malkoff reports our Eye on America tonight from one such community, Perry, Iowa. That is a place where a factory town shut down.
So how many years at the factory for you?
It was just under 14.
Joe Swanson is no longer working in the town he loves, where his kids go to school. That's because Perry, Iowa's largest employer, this Tyson pork plant, just shut down.
None of us picked this. And I just want everybody to be okay. Because I know how hard this is going to be for a lot of people.
If it's this hard for Joe, think of the nearly 1,300 other employees, most of them living in but no longer working in this city.
If you're going to find a new path forward, sometimes it's not here.
Yeah, absolutely. You have the power. Make sure that you find the right opportunity that's going to benefit you and your family.
The reality in Perry is that the right opportunities left a long time ago. The meat processing plant's not modern enough for the company. Upgrades would simply cost too much. Rachel Wacker runs the County Development Alliance.
Maybe we were hoping for a miracle at first where we can just turn off the lights on June 28th and turn them back on with a new user, and that's simply not the case.
And they're not alone. This is one of those one factory town stories. 25% of the people in Perry who are old enough to work in the pork factory do work in the pork factory. If you add in their family and the people who they support, that's about 60% of the town impacted.
This is not new. Youngstown, Ohio was once a thriving steel city of 140,000 in the 70s.
5,000 employees at one time were gone.
The mills closed, and today, the population is less than half of what it used to be. Ohio was hit hard again in 2008, this time in Wilmington, when a shipping hub closed. 42% of the working-age population lost their jobs. Then in 2009, down in Louisiana, a chicken plant, which employed more than a third of the town, shut down in Farmerville. Back in Perry, Iowa, people like Nacho Calderon are learning from history. His last day driving to work may lead to his first day driving for work.
Especialmente de concreto o de basura.
You're trying to be a truck driver or a garbage driver
Sí,
or something like that? Yeah.
Sí, man, yeah.
Driving the garbage trucks this town still needs requires a commercial driver's license.
Good.
The community college is giving these trucking classes away for free to give the workers a shot at staying in town.
How do you feel?
Triste no solo por mí, por otra gente que no.
It's not just you, it's the people that you work with as well. Yeah.
Y no tiene carro.
They don't have cars.
Pagando mucho dinero.
Nacho is still looking for work. Joe has this advice.
And take control.
He found a job running maintenance for an apartment complex out of town.
What I feel like is a great opportunity. And I want that for everyone.
A hopeful wish for friends who lost their jobs, but against all odds, refused to quit on their city. For Eye on America, Dave Malkoff in Perry, Iowa.
Tonight, we begin exploring an anxiety-producing question. Do I have enough saved for retirement? Nearly 40% of households face a lower standard of living in retirement. Over the next few months, Eye on America will examine the uncertainties of retirement and retirement planning. And we start with Jill Schlesinger and a couple in Florida who had retired but are now back on the job.
This is certainly not part of Larry Gessick's retirement plan. The 77-year-old electrician by trade leaves at 5:30 a.m. and heads for his part-time job unloading trailers at a local supermarket in St. Petersburg, Florida, for $14.75 an hour. His wife, Joyce, 66, prepares for her workday, making $14 an hour as a full-time legal administrator.
It's not really a retirement.
What is it?
It's working every day.
The Gessicks came out of retirement not because they wanted to, but because they had to, and are among the 11 million Americans, 1 in 5 over 65, who are still working.
It's hard, 77, still busting my butt.
So I call it the work, retire, repeat syndrome.
Labor economist Teresa Ghilarducci says work is the new retirement.
More than half of the people who are retired right now do not have enough money to be retired.
Who's to blame for all of this?
I blame policymakers who experimented with our retirement system 40 years ago, and they are not saying the experiment failed.
That experiment is what we know today as the 401k, named after part of a 1978 law that offered companies an alternative to the traditional pension plan.
The thought was that Americans just need a little bit of financial literacy, and they can just save on their own.
But in fact, many of today's older workers were never taught enough about saving and investing for retirement.
I grew up on a farm. Nobody there instructed any of us to put money aside and make your own way later on down the road.
Whether you're past 65 like the Gessics or almost their ages, there are a few rules of the road to keep in mind. Basically, everyone needs a plan. First, figure out when it's best to claim Social Security. Next, fund an emergency reserve. Still working? Set aside 6 to 12 months worth of living expenses. Already retired? Make it 1 to 2 years worth. And keep that reserve in a safe, easily accessible interest-bearing account.
Like many working Americans, the Gessics were more doers than savers. They drained their 401ks.
I think to us it felt more like a savings account than to focus on, I need to have this piled up to actually live on.
They have a mortgage, a car loan, and are paying down about $12,000 in other debt. But even with Social Security, some old pension funds, and their paychecks, money is tight.
All these expenses and the debt pay down leaves you with very little money every month, right?
Yes.
How much is that?
$50.
Had the Gessics waited to age 70 to claim Social Security, they would be collecting more.
Can you look at a time where you feel like you can breathe a little more easily, or are you still under stress?
Yeah, it's stressful now, but I think we can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Getting there won't be easy. For Eye on America, Jill Schlesinger in St. Petersburg, Florida.
As we've been reporting, Tropical Storm Debbie continues to pound the East Coast, but 63 million Americans are also coping with excessive heat, enduring temperatures that feel as hot as 110. Think about what that means for people trying to do their jobs. In tonight's Eye on America, David Schechter shows us the proposed protections for workers who can't stand the heat and can't get out of the kitchen.
Sometimes it's a little hectic.
Spend a day with Chef Edwin Sandoval in Denver, and you can't help asking yourself, does this guy ever stop?
I love it, to be honest with you.
This is so much different than being in a traditional brick and mortar restaurant.
Chef Edwin has 2 events ahead of him, a 16-hour day, and it's gonna be hot. Are you feeling good about today? Everything ready to go?
I feel fantastic.
There's always like that, a little bit of an aspect of kind of being like foggy, because I think it's like so hot and your body's trying to adjust the temperature.
Maggie! On board, it's 102 degrees and even hotter in front of the grill. He let me feel the heat for myself.
Go ahead and take the spatula and we're just gonna turn around the chicken.
It is hot in this kitchen.
Yeah.
Have you ever just felt like this is overwhelming?
You know, I think consistently, and I think there's just like to a point where you realize that there's a discomfort in working in kitchens.
Chef Edwin regularly rotates his workers off the grill and carries plenty of water and Gatorade on board. And while 5 states have laws in place protecting workers from excessive heat, for decades, there have been no federal protections.
But that might be changing. This summer, the Biden administration proposed new rules that would protect 36 million workers. At 80 degrees, there'd be access to drinking water and rest areas. And at 90 degrees, mandatory 15-minute work breaks every 2 hours.
The proposed safety standards would cover most private sector jobs like restaurant, construction, warehouse, and delivery. Some big trade groups like the American Farm Bureau Federation oppose the new rules. In a statement, it writes, "This rule is another one-size-fits-all regulation that fails to account for diverse regional differences."
I think they absolutely will make an impact on the lives of workers.
Jill Rosenthal is an advocate for worker health and safety. She says the proposal can be good for both workers and employers.
It can reduce worker compensation claims, reduce healthcare costs. If you consider the productivity losses that employers are facing, it shouldn't be much of a lift.
How can we keep staff the happiest and healthiest and the safest while working for me? But then also I have to sit there with the same logic and say, how can I make this financially responsible on my end?
Across the country, 7 out of 10 communities now experience at least 7 more extremely hot days each year than they did in 1970. In Denver, for example, it's 27 days. In Seattle, it's 14 days. And in Detroit, it's 10. The increases are driven by the way we emit heat-trapping gases that cause climate change.
Yeah, what a day, guys. What a day. You're dealing with this extreme heat throughout the day. I guess
makes for a long day, huh?
Yeah. I can feel it in my joints.
Working in the heat takes its toll. And tomorrow, he'll do it all over again. For Eye on America, I'm David Schechter in Denver.
Our Eye on America tonight examines one of the greatest challenges facing the American family farm, aging. The average age of a farmer is now 58, with a third over 65. CBS's Meg Oliver looks at an innovative program to cultivate the next generation of American farmers.
On an acre of land in Cream Ridge, New Jersey, Christina Couch is a one-woman force.
What are you growing here?
These are sugar snap peas.
And how tall will they get?
About 6+ feet.
Months of prepping, planting, and nurturing 7 days a week have turned her brown field into tidy rows of lush vegetables and herbs.
The last time you were here, they were all the way down to the ground. Now they're up to our shoulders.
Couch, a former cook, is now a newly minted farmer.
We're growing a lot of specialty varieties, so when you go to a restaurant, you see a fancy, colorful beet or a beautiful garnish or a delicate herb.
At 26 years old, she's more than 3 decades younger than the average farmer in the U.S.
Nearly half of the nation's farms are owned by farmers 65 or older, making them the oldest workforce in the country. Why is it so hard to break into farming?
Well, many people are not raised on a farm. Or don't.
Professor and third-generation farmer Bill Lubick is Couch's mentor and actively recruiting the next generation at the Beginner Farmer Training Program at Rutgers University in New Jersey.
We absolutely have to have a next generation of farmers to produce food for us.
The 3-phase program begins with online classes covering farming basics, followed by hands-on training. Select students develop a farm business plan and put it into action. They can rent land from the program with access to equipment and agricultural experts.
The radiation from the sun will break that down. And we are attracting a very diverse group of people into our program. 60% are women, almost that many percentage are minorities.
And you just pluck it right off.
Novices like Couch, many without a farm background, are seeking customers in a non-traditional route.
What does your generation bring to farming?
We're just going about farming a bit differently, a little bit against the grain, and leveraging things like social media, like fundraising. Just let the ground get nice and moist. And just building communities that people are attracted to, want to support young farmers.
Hola. On this day, greens that were picked by Couch just hours earlier were delivered to Jasper Stone Restaurant.
This is Little Gem lettuce.
This is where she used to work as a line cook and realized her dream of farming.
I just had this light bulb moment that I could grow this and help fill the gap so that we don't have to get produce from so far away to put on the tables at restaurants.
Now she's proud to have her locally grown produce turned into delicious salads.
It is the hardest job I've ever had. It is really, really difficult. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Cultivating tomorrow's food supply with growing satisfaction. For Eye on America, I'm Meg Oliver in Cream Ridge, New Jersey.
One of the most talked about speeches here last night was the keynote. Teamsters President Sean O'Brien addressed the RNC railing against big business, in his words, waging a war against American workers. Support for unions is rising, and you may be surprised who's leading the charge. Here's CBS's Janet Shamlian with tonight's Eye on America.
You want to get a better benefit than a pension plan.
Juan and Diego Quintanilla are sheet metal workers campaigning near their job site in Richmond, Texas.
We're offering better pay, better benefits.
Not for a candidate, for an organization. They want to unionize.
If you belong to the union, they're going to take money out of your paycheck.
Yeah, but the benefits that we're going to get, it makes up for way more than what they're going to take.
The 19 and 23-year-old brothers are lobbying these tradespeople to vote yes.
What is it about your generation that's more interested in unions?
We seem to really care about fairness and like equality in the workplace. We all kind of want to get paid a good amount of money for the work that we're putting in.
Support for organized labor, polls indicate, is at a high not seen since the 1960s. Strongest among Generation Z, people in their teens and 20s.
Unions have been out of favor for decades. 20% of workers belonged to one in 1983. But by 2020, that number had fallen by half. Even as membership drops, union support is rising. 71% of Americans approve of them.
Unions had a difficult time making inroads in the South.
University of Texas Associate Professor Adam Cobb has studied unions.
Why do you think a lot of young people are so supportive of unions right now?
We see a really heavy concentration of power among big corporations and the elites that run them. And unions are a counterbalance to the strength of corporate power on the one hand and sort of shift some of that power to workers.
This is our shop.
Sheet metal worker Amber Sage Oliver is part of that young and new to the workplace group. Oliver estimates the same work in a non-union shop would pay at least $200 a week less.
Currently, I'm making about $33 an hour. So that's pretty good in comparison to people who just got out of college or university.
I don't buy the overall trend.
Erin Davis Valdez is a former teacher. She says the teachers union let her down, motivating her to get into public policy to oppose them.
If you look at rates of unionization over time, they've either remained flat or gone way down. So I don't view this as an overall long-term trend.
So do you think this is misguided loyalty on the part of Gen Zs?
I think what will happen is they will be disappointed by what unions promise versus what they deliver.
That argument is just noise for the Quintanilla brothers.
So you guys are sold on unions. You're all in.
100%. We're all in.
A brotherhood that subscribes to the saying, in union, there is strength. For Eye on America, Janet Shamlian, Richmond, Texas.
When a Wyoming highway collapsed outside Jackson Hole last month, it threw a spotlight on something important. Two very different Americas often live side by side. In the U.S., the top 1% now owns nearly as much wealth as the bottom 90%. As CBS's Mark Strassman shows us in tonight's Eye on America, Wyoming is home to one of the wealthiest communities and also one of the most unequal.
In Jackson Hole, Wyoming's Shangri-La in the Tetons, you need silly money to be taken seriously.
A family like mine can't live here. Not even an inkling of a chance.
John Smaley's a construction supervisor in Jackson. Like so many workers here, he can only afford to live on the other side of these mountains, priced out of Jackson Hole's new Gilded Age. Vacationing one-percenters competing for a second home or a fourth.
The billionaires are buying out the millionaires.
It sounds crazy.
It does. You're making a great wage anywhere else in the country, but here you're poverty-stricken.
For most people here, real estate prices are wildly unaffordable. This county's median income is $108,000 a year, but the average listing price of a single-family home is more than $7 million. Driving home the inequality, Smaley's commute over this mountain pass from his house in Driggs, Idaho. It's an hour drive or more to downtown Jackson, with its Old West charm and sticker shock. That's where we met Jessica Sell Chambers.
A lot of these stores, your average working person, this is not for us.
She's a Jackson Town Council member and mayoral candidate. Sell Chambers told us this downtown project is typical luxury short-term rentals. What would you like it to be?
I would love it to be a multi-family, affordable housing.
But that would have been costly and was never an option.
This is beyond gentrification. This is super gentrification.
You can make $200,000, $300,000 a year and not afford to live here.
Correct. It's unsustainable too. Who's going to run the place? Who's going to work and be the backbone of all the services?
Even for people with all the money in the world, there's a moment of reckoning coming.
Yes.
That moment flashed briefly last month. The mountain pass collapsed, 80 feet of it gone. A landslide impassable for 3 weeks, further separating the two worlds.
You're on the TV.
Feeling it in Driggs, Idaho, Pete and Sarah Wilson and their daughter Harper. Sarah's a media creative director. Pete's a firefighter paramedic in Jackson, their hometown. You feel excluded from the place you grew up in?
100%.
Yeah.
I'm the help, even though I'm a firefighter paramedic. Once we're done doing the job, we're expected to kick rocks, get lost.
If you're looking at the American dream or whatever, if you work hard enough, you can have what you want, but you can't.
It's not just gone for now, it's gone forever.
It's gone forever.
Sel Chambers' Jackson home has exploded in value, but the property taxes may drive her family out.
We don't want to go anywhere. It's the money is not important to us, it's the community.
The mountain pass has reopened. The divide stays in place. For Eye on America, Mark Strassman in Jackson, Wyoming.
In tonight's Eye on America, we are examining shrimp, oysters, and liquefied natural gas. In Louisiana, there is a battle unfolding that has some commercial fishermen and producers of LNG squaring off. CBS's Ben Tracy reports from the Gulf Coast.
When Travis Darter and his fellow commercial fishermen spread their nets into these Louisiana waters, there used to be just one word to describe it.
Happiness.
Happiness.
Yeah, we love what we do, right?
This channel flowing into the Gulf of Mexico is famous for its shrimp. Now, it's known for something else.
It's like a nightmare, but when you wake up, it's still there, right?
He's talking about this liquefied natural gas export terminal called Calcasieu Pass, or CP, built next to the town of Cameron. LNG is natural gas that is supercooled into a liquid, so it can be loaded onto tankers and shipped around the world. The CP plant is owned by a company called Venture Global.
We used to have shrimp boats tied all along where this plane is.
He says they had to relocate their boats and their catch has dropped dramatically.
Yeah, one shrimp.
He also moved his family out of Cameron, worried about air pollution from the plant.
Hell yeah, I'm mad as hell.
Venture Global denied our request for an interview, but in a statement said there are no impacts from our projects on fishing or shrimping in the area. Its CP plant is one of 8 operating LNG export terminals in the U.S. 7 more are under construction. Capacity has more than tripled since 2018 and is expected to double again by 2030. Climate activists call these new LNG plants carbon bombs. Natural gas, while considered cleaner than coal, still produces both carbon dioxide and methane emissions that are rapidly warming the planet. These new LNG projects could operate for decades, long past when scientists say the world must stop burning fossil fuels.
We are the largest exporter of natural gas in the world.
We spoke to Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm just after the White House ordered a pause on approvals of new LNG exports in January.
The pause is about what is going to happen to our economy and what is going to happen with greenhouse gas emissions. Those who are asking us to look at this have it right.
This is not the right decision.
Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrill is one of 16 state attorneys general who just convinced a federal judge to temporarily lift the federal LNG pause while litigation against it proceeds. She says the pause hurts Louisiana's economy.
The country and the world is going to need natural gas.
Do you worry about the potential climate impacts?
No.
Why
because
not?
that's not my job. I mean, my job is to hold them accountable under the law.
One could also argue it's not your job to worry about the economic benefits of a particular industry.
So it doesn't just affect the industry, it affects our tax base, It affects our communities. It affects our whole state.
Travis Darter is worried about 2 more LNG plants likely to be built along this channel and what that means for his livelihood.
Yeah, he's dead. Well, I mean, we're literally fighting for our lives here.
A fight he can't afford to lose. For Eye on America, Ben Tracy, Cameron, Louisiana.
This is not expected to be a good year on the farm. The U.S. Department of Agriculture is forecasting a 25% downturn in farm profits, but some farmers in Iowa have put something new in the ground to offset some of those losses. In tonight's Eye on America, CBS's Janet Shamlian has a look at their powerful idea.
For Avi Howe, this is a window of opportunity.
I have my very own wind direction machine out there.
In fact, she has 3 wind turbines on her 160-acre farm in central Iowa. As farmers ready their fields, there's a new cash crop working the land year-round. Wind turbines.
How much money do the turbines bring in each year?
My payment is $35,000 this year, and it keeps going up with inflation.
That's made the difference between keeping the family farm and losing it for struggling farmers, as agriculture becomes more unstable due to climate change.
How many days is it windy out here?
Practically every day, I would say.
When her husband Wallace died a decade ago, farm debts lived on.
How much debt did you have?
I had $350,000.
And now you have?
$67,000.
How did you get that paid off?
With my wind turbine money.
Each turbine takes up less than an acre, leaving plenty of farmable land.
2 decades ago, there were only a few hundred wind turbines in Iowa. Now there are more than 6,000 in this state, and they turn out about 60% of the state's energy.
U.S. wind energy, clean and renewable, avoids carbon emissions equivalent to taking 73 million cars off the road. Nationwide, turbines power about 10% of the U.S. electric grid. You might call attorney Kathy Law the conduit for Iowa wind. The daughter and wife of farmers, she's helped place almost half the state's turbines.
From my farm background, I think I can talk their talk and have conversations with the landowners that are interested in having wind turbines on their properties.
Both women have fielded complaints from critics who say the turbines are a threat to wildlife, ruin the view, and that this is too noisy.
What do you say to the naysayers?
Nobody's requiring them to put that on their farms or on their land. We want to be able to put turbines on our land and receive those benefits.
They need to be perfect.
Avi Haupt is still old-fashioned in some ways. But on power, the 75-year-old is progressive.
I look at it as progress. I think we can't stand in the way of progress.
The vista has changed from decades ago. A view she says suits her.
I need to give up 1 or 2 acres of my land so that I can generate a commodity that we all use every day, and we all want to use more of it every day. So I'm happy to be able to be a part of that generation.
Perspective, focused on the future. For Eye on America, I'm Janet Shamlian in Wellsburg, Iowa.
Tonight, we begin a new era for one of our enduring franchises. 4 times a week, Eye on America will offer in-depth reporting on the news that is shaping our culture and our country. We begin with a look at a threat facing firefighters nationwide. San Francisco could soon become the first city in the U.S. to ban firefighting gear made with so-called forever chemicals, suspected carcinogens known as PFAS. In tonight's Eye on America, Mark Strassman reports from Ohio, where many firefighters worry more about their gear and foam than about smoke and flames.
In small-town Bellbrook, Ohio, firefighter Jay Leach feels burned.
Most firefighters that got in this job knew it's an inherited risk, but we never knew that the gear and the equipment that we're using is killing us.
Inside Fire Station 22, Lieutenant Leach helped remove buckets of firefighting foam. It's called AFFF, undeniably effective, but laced with PFAS, so-called forever chemicals now linked to various cancers, especially among firefighters. Cancer caused 72% of active duty firefighter deaths last year, according to the International Association of Firefighters. A separate study showed smoke inhalation causes 4% of active duty firefighter deaths. A safer foam now exists, and 21 states have introduced policies that limit the use of AFFF firefighting foam. But for Jay Leach, cancer's heartache has no limits. You said you wanted to show me something.
I do. I keep my wife with me in my helmet. There's a picture of her in there.
Oh, yeah. So you wear that whenever you go on a call?
Mm-hmm.
His wife, Tracy, was a firefighter for 25 years. Her diagnosis in 2017, breast cancer, despite no family history of cancer.
It pretty much ravaged her body. And then December of 2022, she was diagnosed terminally. And 2 weeks later, on Christmas Eve, she passed away.
You can't conclusively prove it.
Correct.
But in your gut.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly believe that PFAS caused my wife's cancer.
In a statement, the American Chemistry Council, an industry group, said it supports limits on using AFFF, adding, all PFAS are not the same. It is not scientifically accurate or appropriate to group them together when considering safety risks. But for Jay Leach, this moment was cathartic, dropping off buckets of AFFF for destruction. Tens of thousands of gallons of it sit in fire stations across America. Ohio is the first state committed to destroying all of it. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine.
This gives us an alternative.
Sitting there, which does nobody any good.
Does no one any good. You know, it might leak out. There's a danger whenever you have a product like that.
Another worry. PFAS have been inside firefighting gear for decades. PFAS help repel water and contaminants, but put on this gear and you're wrapping yourself inside suspected carcinogens.
We sweat, our pores open up, and the forever chemicals can go in our body.
19 years into this job, are you more scared of fires or are you more scared of cancer?
Cancer. Absolutely. I love the job, but at the end of the day, I sit and think, is it worth it?
They realize the irony, scared of what's supposed to protect them. For Eye on America, Mark Strassman, Bellbrook, Ohio.